Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the June edition of Connecting the Dots with Dr. Food. We want to say hello to our regular listener who's milking the cows this morning. David, as I mentioned to you during our prep call, she came up to me during a dairy sustainability meeting. She said she loves listening to you. So she'll tolerate me, but you're the person that she really likes listening to. So we will say good morning to her as she continues to milk the cows. Here at the Center for Food Integrity, we continue to be dedicated to building trust in today's food system. And we do that in part by providing unique insights into the minds of consumers and those in food systems. And we do that all around the world. And there's no more traveled food expert than our world traveling friend, Dr. David Hughes, who is joining us from down under. Welcome, David, from Australia.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm coming, Charlie. I'm coming to the end of a 3-week visit in Australia. And what's more, it's my 53rd visit to this fine country. I'm talking about food and drink trends in 4 of the major cities of Australia. It's both exhilarating and exhausting.
Yes, yes, it's one of my favorite countries as well, and congratulations on being so incredibly well respected. I'm surprised they've not yet made you an honorary citizen, and they may just yet before you take off for
And
this
I'm
trip.
waiting for the passport.
There you go. There you go. All right, so we're going to be looking forward to hearing about your adventures as well as some updates on food-related issues that we've been following around the world. So our first topic is going to focus on exactly where you are. So tell us what you're hearing and seeing in Australia and what food producers and consumers are talking about in that part of the world.
Right. Okay. Now, I know most will know something about Australia, but just to remind, it's the world's smallest continent. But and that doesn't that suggests it's small, but no, not really. It's the same size in square miles as the US minus Alaska. Uh, but from a people perspective, it's pretty much empty. And there you are at 340 million people. Well, Australia, the Aussies, there's only 28 million of them. You can get them on a series of buses. And almost everyone lives within 30 miles of the sea. 70% of Australians live in 6 cities. And as I mentioned, I'm visiting 4 of them, Melbourne, Sydney, and then at either side, Perth on the west coast, where I was last week, and Brisbane on the east coast, where I am now. Yeah, I love Australia, clearly, after 53 visits. And consumer concerns, as you mentioned, Charlie, like anywhere else, actually, it's the cost of living crisis. Uh, I'm reminded that 40% of Australian households are on household incomes of $3,000 US
Wow.
or less per month. And food's expensive here. Actually, everything's expensive here apart from gas and wine. And so that those 40%, close to half the households are worried about just coping with food prices. And I'm always astonished at how high house prices are here, and rents are very, very high. And so, just like the US, I mean, interest rates on mortgages are 7%. So, there's a lot of just genuine concern. Can we make it through the month? And it's palpable. You can see it as you move around. It's a sort of intriguing food market overall because uh, uh, there are 2 principal retailers, Woolworths and Coles, and they account for about 70% of the grocery market share. And then just behind them is Aldi, who came into the Australian market, actually, if I remember, about 20 years ago. They've got about 12%. And whenever you get 2 big players in a market in which food prices have spiked or they're perceived to be high, then there's a call for who's the villain. And as we both know, Charlie, normally the first port of call for villains is say it must be the retailer.
Right.
And actually, the 6th report on who's to blame has just been published by the government. And what did they say? They pointed the 2 retailers, the 2 principal ones, are the world's most profitable retailers. There's an
Hmm.
indication. And that they need to be much more transparent. You could say the same in the US to a degree, that particularly for when they're dealing with homegrown meat, dairy, and fruit and veggie producers who feel that they're in an acute cost squeeze at the moment. So it's politically a hot topic, food retailing. Moving on to sort of international trade, well, the Australia is a big food producer.
Hmm.
90% of food Aussies eat is home produced. And of course, the substantial global food exporters. You'll probably know what do they export? Beef, lamb, wheat, barley, canola, rice, sugar, and of course, the lovely wine. And needless to say, they're concerned about emerging tariff policies, not least in the USA. And they're concerned, especially for their beef and wine exports to the US. You might say, why would Australia send beef to a great beef producing country like the US? Well, Australian beef exported to the US is their lean grass-fed beef, and it's used for ground beef in your burgers to blend, if you will, with your higher fat grain-fed beef. I mean, in fact, when I think about it, that Australia isn't really on the top of the naughty list for you with regard with President Trump's naughty list, because Australia has a very big trade deficit with the US. They import big ticket items like planes, cars, and a lot of FMCG branded food goods. But it's not just the US they're worried about on trade tariffs. They're always concerned about China. Why? Because China is a huge export customer for them, and every now and again they fall out. So, for example, I can remember if we went back 3 or 4 years in COVID times, then the Prime Minister of Australia had called for uh, uh, China to have a look at why did the pandemic start in Wuhan and who was to blame. And President Xi didn't like that. And he promptly banned essentially all exports from Australia of beef, barley, wine, and lobsters.
Ouch.
I remember tracking wine. It went from $1 billion exports to zero in a flash. So yeah, that's so trade things right at the top of the list. And then, of course, climate change is never far from the headlines here. Australia is the world's driest continent. Much is desert-like. I've just been through South Australia, which is in severe drought, frankly, and natural fires are a concern, just as they are in the US and Canada. But look, Australians are far from being doom-laden and despondent. The country is known as the lucky country. Back to when I was in Western Australia last week. And if you dig a hole in Western Australia, you'll likely find something very interesting. They mine gold, nickel, rare earth, metals, diamonds, iron ore, and bauxite. What isn't to like? And I notice whenever in Perth Airport that you're often the only person who isn't wearing a high-vis jacket because most people in the airport are FIFO miners, fly in, fly out miners, that 2 weeks on the mine and then 1 week out. So there we are. That's my little bit on Australia, Charlie.
Well, glad you're enjoying the trip and hope you enjoy some vacation time and some time away when you finish this particular round of conversations and speeches wherever you happen to be going. So let's continue the conversation. You mentioned a little bit about international trade and tariffs. They continue to be of great concern for agriculture and the food system in the US and the UK and other parts of the world because they continue to be extremely volatile and very difficult to predict. So, help us understand what's going on in the UK specifically as it relates to tariffs.
Right. Well, let's start with the US. And in the midst of the turmoil surrounding the US's tariff policy around the world, actually, the UK has just struck a deal with the US. And as far as I can see, that gives you guys special access to our market for up to about $1 billion worth of agri-food products from the US. And we've reduced tariffs on your cars and on ethanol. And then, strangely, for some reason, we now have an export license for a tiny quantity of UK beef into your
Hmm.
market. But actually, in fact, for the UK, I think really the trade deal wasn't to do with food. It was more to do with protecting and promoting our financial services sector, which has
Hmm.
a very positive and a growing trade with you. So it was more about financial services. So that was with the US. We've just signed a broad spectrum free trade agreement with India. And so that's reducing tariffs to zero. Well, what do we export to India? Well, not least gin and whiskey, of course. And then what do we get back from India? Amongst other things, tea, spices, and rice. And again, those tariffs are just right down to zero. And then back to Australia, actually, I have to go back about 2 years now. We we have a free trade, a comprehensive free trade agreement with Australia, and that eliminated tariffs on 99% of all Aussie goods exported over here. It wasn't well received by farmers, UK farmers, because of lamb and beef exports, which they feel
Sure.
that they really it's difficult for us to compete with the Aussies on that. But good news for me, for I'm a UK wine consumer, and frankly, Australian wine in the UK is astonishingly inexpensive for very high quality.
Yeah, hard to beat a good wine, a good red from the Barossa Valley. It's quite
Mhm.
tasty all the time. So it's fascinating you as you talk about the tariffs, David, and talk about free trade agreements. We're both mature enough to recognize and remember the dates when it used to take years, if not decades, to negotiate a free trade agreement. And now they're happening in a matter of weeks as people are trying to negotiate particular deals without the same level of detail. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this level of volatility and uncertainty continues to impact the markets. But switching gears, there's been a great deal of discussion on processed foods, particularly as it relates to the health of children. The Make America Healthy Again Commission has released their report not too long ago. And, there are lots of questions about what we should be eating, what we should be drinking, and some similar activity regarding packaged beverages in the UK. What's the latest?
Right, and this revolves around our soft drink tax, which was essentially a sugar tax introduced in 2018. It was a sugar tax on sugar in drinks. And it has been credited with slashing sugar in soft drinks by 35%. I mean, actually, my memory is that the government, even as they started talking about the prospect of introducing such a tax, caused the beverage guys to reduce sugar and change their ingredient mix even before the law came in. But then the law
Yep.
did come in. But now the current government here are much concerned, as yours are, about the obesity crisis, if you will, particularly in children. And so the food minister in the UK is proposing to dial up the sugar tax and what's more, extend it to milk-based drinks.
Hmm.
And can just put this in grams, which won't mean a lot to everybody in the US. But so the lower threshold from 5 grams of sugar per 100 mils of drink is being dialed down to 4 grams of sugar. Now, that doesn't seem much, but it's certainly upset the beverage industry. They're saying, look, we spent years adjusting our ingredient mix. You just can't do it overnight. And there's a widespread concern that may push the industry to use more artificial sweeteners, which are,
Hmm.
I mean, actually in the US are starting to be knocked again with the Make America Health Again. So yeah, that's the sugar tax. But then there's another. This is more to do with sustainability and and recycling. But the government has just announced that they will be introducing a deposit return scheme
Hmm.
on drinks in plastic or metal cans, which is that whoever buys, all consumers will pay a 15-cent deposit on all drinks in plastic or metal cans. And then, so can you get your 15 cents back? Yes, but you've got to return the bottle or can to a designated return point, which could be in store where you bought it, or any store for that matter, or in a reverse vending machine. And the industry so recognize that they're on this journey to getting complete recycling, but they are concerned because it adds complexity to their supply chains.
Hmm.
Of course, the machines, the reverse vending machines, somebody has to pay for them, and they think that'll be us. And then there's a whole area to be redesigned for labeling, etc. But the direction of travel, for my mind, is quite clear. I more towards a circular economy for packaging of whatever sort, frankly.
Yeah, and we continue to see pressure for that in the U.S. as well, with more extended producer responsibility for packaging materials, et cetera. I'll be fascinated to see how this experiment plays out. The logistics of it boggle my mind a bit in terms of how they're going to coordinate and organize. And the metal recycling, I understand. The plastic recycling is more complex. You might have a much better handle on it in the UK than we have in the US because we do not do a good job with those materials here in the United States. So, David, thank you again for another fantastic edition of this. I want to wish you very safe travels as you travel the rest of the world, and we look forward to connecting with you as this adventure completes next time we get together on the 3rd of July. So, wish you all the best as you continue to make those travels. And for all of you who are listening, we hope you will join us again next time on the 3rd of July for another edition of Connecting the Dots with Dr. Food. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye now.